Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize. I lied. I said we were done talking about the Ohio State-Purdue game, but we can't be. It's Wednesday, there's stocks, and there are a lot of new players to talk about, so we're back with a traditional stock watch on a Wednesday edition of The Beat. He's Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. And what an interesting trip it was to Purdue, because normally those are the games I say we love. I apologize again for saying that it was kind of a boring game. A scrimmage opportunity, a chance to look at a bunch of fresh evaluations, that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, and we don't have to talk about it in the Purdue game context. We can talk about it in the what role is available for these players in the future context. We'll see. Anything can happen on the beat.
Yeah, that's true.
We've noticed that. But I think this conversation has to start with two guys that Ryan Day mentioned on Tuesday. I'm not going to have to divulge too much about either one or both because I know we'll run it through, but it was like 6 months ago when James Laurinaitis said that Payton Pierce is a starting linebacker at Ohio State, so it should not be a surprise that he's a player that is grading out really well and contributing and doing all of the things that you expect. But it was a really nice reminder on Saturday in West Lafayette that if they want to take a step back or give Sonny Styles a little bit less of an opportunity or a few less reps this Saturday like they did with Arvell Reese last Saturday, that you can just put Payton Pierce out there and say, Sonny's going to get the load management this week. And Payton, you're the guy. So because Payton is capable of playing all over the linebacker positions, he can play the Mike, he can play the Sam, he can play the Will. I think that it's a good reminder of how valuable guys like him are, because we don't generally talk that much about Payton Pierce other than calling him the Texas Tornado, which of course is the world's greatest nickname. But I do think that he is a player that is really important to this team, especially as we head into Ann Arbor in 3 weeks.
Yeah, we'll see how quickly his hair can grow back out, but it didn't slow him down at all on Saturday. It's not a coincidence to me that when Ryan Day was asked about those players who made the most of the reps, he wasn't looking to next year beyond and naming like freshmen who are just getting the taste of experience. It was a more immediate conversation. Who might, if an injury happens, you knock on wood, if production dip, anything, different scheme, different packages that they can use, who could step in? And the people that he named first, because Ian Moore, we're going to put him on the side. That's a different conversation, potentially. Maybe it's not. But Payton Pierce, for sure, and Bryson Rodgers, potentially, for guys who could contribute at this week, next week, in the big house, potentially in Indianapolis or in the college football playoff. Because, you see, and who knows what's going to happen with the muscle tightness for Carnell Tate. There is an immediate opportunity where Ohio State's going to need a third wide receiver to step in. And it was almost like a head-to-head competition between Bryson Rodgers and Mylan Graham. And I would say on Saturday, Bryson Rodgers won that. Now, that's not fair. It's a one-game sample size. I think, the drop, Ohio State sat Mylan Graham down for a little bit after that. Bryson Rodgers had the 2 catches that moved the chains. Somebody pointed out to me on Sunday some of the success that I didn't notice in real time with Bryson Rodgers blocking on the edge. He was getting praised immediately for what he did at Purdue, and that's important. You want Carnell Tate out there. That's Ohio State at its best. But if there's a scenario where you have to sit him against UCLA or it lingers for any period of time, and I don't know, I have bad memories of Jackson Smith and Jigba and Emeka Egbuka dealing with injuries that go longer than you think that they're going to. You need somebody to step in. This team won't change its goals if it has one injury.
No, but it's also a reality check that Bryson Rodgers is a guy who can compete with Brandon Inniss for reps. Like if Bryson's been here 3 years. Like this is not a guy who you're putting out in practice and he can do one thing. You're like, well, you're the X. That's all you can do. You can run outside routes. Like he can do things. He's got some juice. Like when he gets the football, he's got some juice. We saw it last year when he had the big play that got called back. Like he's got juice. He actually had the holding on the play, Quinton Judkins' long touchdown. Now I'm getting my moments confused. But Bryson has some ish.
Well, he was trying.
Yeah, he's got some stuff to him, and he's a little bit feisty out there. That blocking play for Quinton Judkins is one of those moments. He's not afraid to get physical, but he's also shifty enough to be a guy that can make an impact in the slot. So if Bryson has an opportunity to push Brandon Inniss, why not? Like Brandon's elevating, believe it or not, the kick return, the punt return role has gotten a lot better. He's getting close.
Yeah.
So the more weapons you have, the better. And Bryson Rodgers can contribute to this offense. I mean, I remember talking about it back in the spring. Like he has a thing to him that nobody else really on this roster currently has. And as good a deep threat as JJ is and Carnell has been, because Julian's putting the ball there, like if you just want a guy who can go run past someone, Bryson Rodgers in one-on-one situations, because he's always going to be covered man-to-man, is a guy that can be that guy.
Yeah, but I think and we know, we've been covering this team for a long time, that if you can't do all the other things, and that reminds me of yet another Ohio State wide receiver where it's like Jaden Ballard could have done that. Well, Ohio State is not going to make a role for you to just go run a 9. No. Like that, you have to be able to block, and Bryson Rodgers is doing that. And I don't think anyone would have said, well, that's going to be the strength of his game. But if you're going to survive and if you're ultimately going to contribute to Ohio State at wide receiver, you darn well better be able to do that. And he's showing signs of doing that. It's also it's why Brandon Ennis' role has never really been challenged in the slot, because he's willing to do that dirty work. And now you're also seeing not just that he's nearly going to break one of these things. You can just feel it. It's about to happen.
Yeah.
But he's increasingly making more plays as a passing threat as well, or as a receiving threat. So, if there was concern about him in the first half of the season, and we heard a lot of that, and like, why is Brandon Ennis have this role? I think you're starting to see all of that happen right now. He deserves credit for that.
But you have to be willing to do things to separate yourself from the other guys. And as all of the great things that Jeremiah Smith does and Carnell Tate does, I think if we're all being honest with ourselves, America, we can identify that these guys have not been elite perimeter blockers this season for Ohio State.
Yeah.
And that's where Brandon Ennis is willing to mix it up. Bryson Rodgers is willing to do that. So if you can find ways to provide just something a little different, like even last year, we go back to the Penn State game when Ohio State put in Brandon Ennis and Bryson Rodgers in the 3 wideouts. Well, there's no way these guys are going to throw it in these moments. Like, you can do things.
Surprise!
You're like, they put those guys out there and thought, oh, these are their blocking receivers. So now you can do a lot of things. I think it sets up really well for a unit that is looking for guys. I mean, Ryan Day on Tuesday was talking about David Adolph. Like, he's a walk-on who's been here for 4 years, and like, the moment's there. Like, just go get it. Especially when you've got these 2 games coming up, because
it wasn't an encouraging light that David Adolph was mentioned.
Hey, you're mentioning him. He's on the field early. He's in the field in the second quarter.
I know. That probably
moment's there. That's all.
Yeah. Somebody has to make the most of it. And again, if Mylan Graham hadn't dropped that ball early on, maybe David Adolph would have got those opportunities. We'd be having a different conversation. Yeah. Mylan did bounce back. He had a 20-yard catch in the second half. That was important for him. So we'll see what that means. Ohio State has said repeatedly that they need that depth at wide receiver, and it is not because there's uncertainty about the top 3, because there's none.
Yeah.
But they are in the midst of dealing with an injury. There's no update at this point, nor would I expect there to be one on a Wednesday morning, or even when we come back in Wednesday night, Woody Wednesday.
Well, especially because we will generally be watching to see how Carnell looks, but he looks fine on Saturday.
And he looks absolutely fine on Saturday. So there won't be an update on that, and we're all just going to have to probably wait until 7:30 on Saturday night. But injuries happen. It is a long season. It is not just limiting the reps over the course of the year purely to keep guys fresh. You're also trying to avoid injury scenarios like Ohio State is dealing with right now, which also then opened the door for Ian Moore to get a start at right tackle, which was a pretty impressive one.
For a kid going home to his home state, growing up, he said he grew up right up near West Lafayette, to have your first career start in that moment. And I understand Purdue is Purdue, but their defensive line gets after it. They had a lot of sacks. They have a lot of tackles for loss. Yep. They mix up a lot of things. Ryan Day said, on Tuesday that they saw a lot of different looks from Purdue that they really weren't expecting. So he was actually praising the pass protection that the offensive line did while being asked about pass protection from the running backs. But it's a situation where you just have to be able to step into that moment. And Ian Moore said it correctly on Saturday. And I think it's the mindset that a lot of these guys have to have, including Bryson Rodgers, including Mylan Graham, including Payton Pierce, anybody who we talk about on this show. Ian Moore said, I've been waiting for that. I've been praying for this moment. So you get out there and you better be ready to go, because that window where you can actually help, where you can actually contribute to this year's team on a team that is the best in the country is super limited. So if that opens even for a 1 quarter period of play and you don't immediately step in and take it and grab it by the reins, then you never know when you're going to get your next shot. So Ian, as a second-year guy, this point in his career, he certainly looked better than I would have anticipated for start number 1.
I thought it was really fascinating. I don't know that I've ever heard Ryan Day describe, somebody's game where he's been on the practice squad or in practices too long without game opportunities, where like it was 70, 80% perfect. 4 to 6 A to B, being the mantra. It was more like 3 to 5 and A to B. He was getting there, but he wasn't, he said, quite finishing the play the way Ohio State wants him to. But that's the stuff that you can only learn as a player and as a coach by giving them reps and opportunities. So as you mentioned, like Purdue had been productive in opponents' backfields all year. They had 53 tackles for loss going into last week's game. They threw different blitzes and they attacked Ohio State in ways that they weren't expecting. So not only is Ian Moore having to go out there and learn and grow on the fly, but he's also seeing some things that he probably didn't expect on film. So I think that certainly carries a lot of weight. It is not by accident, because I anticipated this. Ryan Day doesn't like to single players out. And so I was kind of hoping that as I threw the line out that I'd get multiple names in response. So it is not a coincidence that he named Ian Moore. I don't know that means there's about to be a rotation at right tackle. You mentioned this on Snap Judgments on Tuesday. I don't know if it means that you could, the different permutation of Phillip Daniels at right guard would exist, although dating back to training camp, I believe he and Austin Birm have both been exclusively and primarily at tackle, so that it might be a little bit too late to make that move. But Ian Moore, if nothing else, gave Tyler Bowen something to think about.
Yeah, and again, we're talking about a different era of college football. There's no reason why Saturday night, if Ohio State's up 30 points in the third quarter, that Austin Birm has to play.
Yeah.
So, and then you can find a role for Ian Moore. You can find a way to move Phillip Daniels and start looking at how would this twosome look as our starting tackles next season, because both those guys are supposed to be there. So maybe Ian's at left tackle because he's a little bit longer. Maybe you move Phillip over there because he's a little, I don't know exactly what you're looking for, but all you want at this point in the season is for guys to be taking that step and saying, I deserve to be on the field, give me a shot, instead of I am not getting on the field, so I don't care. And like right now, you definitely see the culture of this program is so strong that these guys, it's 2.5 months into the season, like, hey, I'm still grinding. I'm still going to get there. And as you mentioned, that 3 to 5 seconds instead of 4 to 6, like now he knows. Now he knows, okay, well, this is what I have to do when I'm in the field at an actual game, and I'm on the line next to whoever my right guard is. Like I need, now I know how I communicate here. Now I know how this is different. So, obviously everything is geared up toward November 29th and what is going to happen in Ann Arbor, but Ian Moore may have to play in that game. You never know if Phillip Daniels has a lingering thing and he gets dinged up for 2 plays. I mean, think about 2019 at Ohio State at Michigan, and Chris Chuganoff having to come into the game and throw one ball. That one ball basically created an avalanche in that game. Justin Fields came back on the field and threw an unbelievable throw to Garrett Wilson. But like, if the Buckeyes don't pick up that third down,
it doesn't happen.
Doesn't happen. So like, you can't use an excuse at Ohio State to say, well, I hadn't played yet, so how am I supposed to execute? Like, you do all the bloody Tuesdays all year long. You do all the Wednesday night practices, all the Thursday practices all year long, so that you can contribute the minute you're put out there. And even if it's just 1 minute, there's no excuse. And so to see Ian Moore take that opportunity and really excel at it, I think is something that Ohio State has to be looking back on Wednesday morning saying, yes, that's exactly what we needed.
So far on this stock watch, we've only named the people that Ryan Day named.
Mm-hmm.
We probably should present some of our own original thoughts.
Sure. I thought Devin Sanchez made an improvement on Saturday. Obviously, he got called for a pass interference. I think that was a BSPI call, whatever. Purdue decided to deploy the back shoulder underthrown, just run into the defensive back, even though the ball's flying out of bounds and totally isn't catchable, whatever. Cool. I thought for a lot of these kids, and this conversation with Devin is the same as anyone else, it's like once you start to get those reps and you start to build your confidence, you can go out there and feel like this is just football now. And even for a guy like James Peoples, who I continue to think, we talked about last week on Stockwatch, he's running so much harder than he was. And that alone means that the role that you're wanting has a better chance of being accomplished. And I thought Devin, to me, is a guy who Saturday, I'm like, looks good, because we don't know how many different variations the Buckeyes can find in the secondary.
Yeah.
There's that question that Justin Zwick brought up at the live show at Roosters on Monday about the deep seams, and does Jermaine Matthews change things a little bit if he's in the slot at the nickel position instead of Lorenzo Styles, or is it just a matter of the way that the scheme is and that spot's going to be open? I don't know, but I do think that it's an opportunity for all these guys. Aaron Scott continues to play well. A stupid penalty in that game as well, but that will happen when you're out there and it's kind of slop time, but
Slop them up.
Slop them up.
No, I think I think it's fair to point that out because some of this conversation is about who can help later on in the playoff push if necessary.
I have an idea of who you're going to say.
Some of this is about next year. You have an idea?
Maybe. Okay. Are you going to talk about Jelani Thurman?
I wasn't going to talk about Jelani.
Okay. Whew, go ahead then. I thought he played well on Saturday too. I thought good moments for him.
I think there were encouraging spots from most of the tight ends. I definitely wouldn't say all. I think this is gonna sound crazy. Am I crazy?
Are you crazy? I'm going to make a midweek bold prediction. Nate Roberts is going to score a touchdown this week because it will be the 5th Ohio State tight end to score a touchdown in this season, and that's never happened.
Only 3 teams in college football have 4 tight ends who have scored touchdowns this year, and Ohio State is one of those 3. So they will no doubt, I think, be making an emphasis to get number 5. They tried to do that on Saturday. I think I would buy stock in C.J. Donaldson as an H-back or a fullback or in a variety of different ways in the red zone. And he's scoring touchdowns with amazing consistency. I mean, he might finish with more touchdowns than yards this season at the way he's going. But, that's not possible at this point. I know that. But I just can't stop thinking about the block on the Lincoln Kienholz, the Wildcat package when they put him in there. It's like, why not try that once or twice or 3 times instead of Nate Roberts? I really like Nate Roberts as a player. I think he's got a bright future. I just don't think physically, and we hear this year after year after year after year after year, that tight end is a development position and that you have to be able to do this like a running back and pass protect like a running back and beat a defensive end one-on-one or, all these things and then go run a route against a safety and a linebacker. That takes time to do. I'm not sure that he's ready for that. And I wonder if you say that it's a bold P. I wonder if they are at that point now this late in the year where it's like, okay, we've tried. It's probably not going to work this year. And C.J. Donaldson immediately Jelani Thurman could do that too. I think Bennett Christian could. I think any of these other guys are probably more physically equipped to handle those requirements, at least in the role that has been given to Nate Roberts so far. But I feel like C.J. Donaldson would be the best at it because you could still hand him the football there.
Well, you can't, on one hand, talk about how much you're seeking players that are multiple and versatile and can do all these things. When you recruited C.J. Donaldson out of West Virginia, one of the talking points around here is like, this is a former tight end, former wide receiver. This is a guy who can do a lot of things. And then not use him in those roles. Like, you can do a lot of things with C.J. Donaldson. Maybe he's not your every down running back, but the point for this Ohio State team is to get to its best version of itself at the end of November. Clearly, the best version of itself is Bo Jackson and Isaiah West having the majority of the football rushing attempts. Now, C.J. Donaldson has a role here, and I think he's got a much clearer, much more easy to define role than James Peoples, for example, who I don't know that James does anything better than Bo or Isaiah at this point, maybe other than a little bit of pass pro, but those guys are not in the field on pass pro situations anyway, so as we saw why on Saturday when Isaiah West got a little bit of a whiff there. But the point is C.J. Donaldson can do some things. So I think you can have him in the backfield. I think you can have him lead blocking for Nate Roberts, for example. I think that there's other things you can do.
Wrinkled my brain.
Yeah, there's things you can do. If you want to have those guys back there, have a little full house backfield and let those guys both block. For if you put Nate Roberts and C.J. Donaldson out there with Bo Jackson or Isaiah West or James Peoples, I got a sneaking suspicion you're going to get some points.
Yeah, that might work. I mean, remember how much I love Chip Trainum?
Yes. And Mitch Rossi, who got a shout out on Tuesday at Ohio State.
That was music to my ears. They didn't just say, well, here's the only thing that Chip Trainum can do. Here's the only thing that Mitch Rossi could do. What brought value was that, and the same applies to C.J. Donaldson. He has been deployed as a receiving threat in the past, and he has been this year for Ohio State as well. If you had a situation where the running back depth got decimated, which did happen, where Chip Trainum had to start in a pretty meaningful game, he could do that. Is he going to be the most explosive running back on Ohio State's roster? No. Is he going to be the best blocker on Ohio State's roster? Probably not. Is he the best receiving threat on Ohio State's roster? No. But the fact that he can do all of those things is incredibly valuable. Most people can't do the variety of, be used in that variety of ways the way that C.J. Donaldson can be. So I know that it has become, a little bit of a conversation that, well, sometimes he runs with the pads too high and he lacks the explosiveness of the other guys, and it becomes a comparison with Bo Jackson and Isaiah West. Like, he's not ever going to win those, but his role over here and his value to Ohio State, I don't think should be minimized. And in fact, I think there's some argument to be made that as of right now, Ohio State is not actually fully tapping into that.
I think the argument clearly is that at this point through this 9 games in the season, he has been underappreciated for what he's contributed and what he's done. And so, now, again, as you head to the end of November, the goal is what's the best version of us look like? And I think that the opportunities to be more versatile with CJ are part of that puzzle for sure, because he does things that Bo and Isaiah can't do, which I don't think James Peoples can at this point.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else you want to add in there?
I was interested, and maybe you can tell me if do you think that there is a more opportunity for that Lincoln Kienholz package to be deployed? Because Ryan Day on Tuesday bringing it up, saying he thought it was really well done and they thought it out and it was really well executed. Why does it have to be Lincoln Kienholz to do that instead of Julian Sayin? Is that just because that's something maybe I want to try to ask Ryan on Wednesday night if we get an opportunity. Like, I understand Lincoln is an elite athlete. Ryan has gone out of his way over the last couple months to talk about Julian's ability to run, and he's more nimble than you think, and he can do things.
And we've seen it.
And we saw it at the game against Penn State. So, like, why does it have to be Lincoln? But also, if it does have to be Lincoln, is that something that you can do more with more regularity? Because obviously, similar to Nate Roberts going in the backfield, whenever Nate's out there at fullback, people know what's coming. And so if you do this with Lincoln, then you better have something out of it where he's throwing the ball too, right? Because
I'm not in favor, never have been. That's pretty well documented that I don't like the quarterback packages, whether that was Tate Martell, whether that was JT Barrett, whether that was Devin Brown. And even when Lincoln went in there on Saturday, I was kind of like, is this necessary? Now I get it. He deserves the opportunities. Yeah. But to your point, I actually think that we will see it on Saturday night against UCLA, and I would bet a lot of money that it's so that Lincoln can throw, so that when or if it is used in a bigger game down the stretch or the game or beyond, that you can't just zone in and think, oh, this is going to be the power run and just follow the block, wherever Lincoln goes, go make that play. Like, I think we'll probably see him pass for a touchdown on Saturday. It's not a bold P show.
Doesn't Julian need a Heisman moment where he's mossing a defensive back in the end zone, jumping up and catching the ball?
Philly special?
Yeah, where Lincoln throws it to him.
Yeah,
both on the field.
Yeah,
why not? Little two-banger quarterback action.
Why not?
Why not, America? It's UCLA in prime time, baby. You can do anything you want.
All right, feels like we're already just towing the line of bold predictions, but that will not be till Friday. A reminder, if you want to send us in a question for that, we'll expand it a little bit to not just our bold Ps. We'll take a mailbag question, or maybe even 2, at the Austin and Birm Show at gmail.com. But that is going to be it for Wednesday. Stock Watch on the beat, the Austin and Birm Show. We will be back Wednesday evening to hear from some players and have a Ryan Day lightning round. I bet we don't get a lot of insight on the injury report, but we'll try our best to see what we see as we get back into this building and halfway to Ohio State and UCLA. Saturday night, prime time. He's Birm. I'm Austin. Thanks for joining us. Talk to you later.